Welcome to the Livingston County Election Certification 2020 edition.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hundley, the Livingston County Clerk. Welcome to Livingston County's first ever video training for election inspectors. We're including video training as an option to meet the needs of our inspectors during the time of this COVID-19 crisis. The training provided in this video is very much similar to what we're providing with our in-person training classes that we are also conducting. Michigan election law requires the county clerk to provide training prior to each election and prohibits an election inspector from working at an election unless they have had training within the last 2 years preceding that election. Our training today will focus on what we commonly refer to as our 2-year certification training for all of our election inspectors. Thank you for taking this training and preparing to work during our elections. You are essential to the success of our democratic process. You play a vital role in upholding the integrity of our elections and instilling confidence among our voters. It's your dedication and thorough effort that enables our Livingston County Board of Canvassers to canvass and certify that an election was conducted properly according to Michigan and federal law. If you are a new inspector, we realize that this seems like an overwhelming amount of work. New inspectors must have the training, but it's going to be your actual work on election day that's going to cement this in your mind for you. If you're an experienced inspector or a chair, you will find this review of information very helpful. Even if you're working in an absentee voter counting board, this 2-year certification training is required, and you'll find it a great refresher. We're always looking for additional election inspectors. We invite you to recruit your family, friends, and your neighbors to join you in this community service. On behalf of the Livingston County Clerk's Office, our city and township clerks, and the voters of Livingston County, thank you for participating in the election process here in Livingston County. And with that, your election training will now take over with Joe Bridgman as the election coordinator as your instructor. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction. This is what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to talk about equipment and equipment setup, Hart InterCivic, Verity Scan, and Touch Writer. Then we're going to talk about opening the polls. We're going to walk you through opening the equipment and cover some important elements of opening. Most of the day is going to be spent on processing voters, talking about that day-to-day operation, those things that you're most concerned with. Then we're going to finish with closing the polls, walking you through how to close the polls and that fun paperwork that you enjoy so much. So let's get started. First thing we have is the Hart Verity system is the system that we currently use, which is the tabulator, which is the Verity Scan. We all see this picture that here on this slide. This is what the scan looks like, or the tabulator looks like on election day. Some folks will be fortunate and have this already set up. Others will have to set this up. So we'll get into that in just a few moments. The next component we have is the Verity Touch Writer. This is a unit that is designed for the disabilities community. It is a ballot marking device only. We call this the Verity Touch Writer. We call it the Voter Assisted Terminal, and we also call it short for VAT. As you can see, it is made up of two components. You have the actual touch writer, you have a printer. This device will print the actual ballot after the votes are cast on the touch screen or through the Verity Access, or that paddle as we call it, and we'll get more into that shortly. The third component for the Verity Heart system that we have is what we refer to as V drives. You'll hear me talk about V drives during the day, or this is called the memory device. This is where the actual election is stored on the scan and the touch writer. So you'll hear me talk more about that later. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a quick video of showing you how to set up a ballot box and a scan. So we'll get right into this video.
Welcome to the Verity Voting System polling place training for the Verity Scan. The Verity Voting System includes several different polling place devices. The number and type of devices used at each polling place may vary. In this video, you will learn about the Verity Scan digital scanning device. Each Verity device is contained in an integrated case. The device case includes a label that identifies the type of device. Verity Scan has a blue S label. Setting up the ballot box. Verity Scan is a polling place-based digital scanner for scanning and casting ballots. Verity Scan can be used with hand-marked ballots, printed ballots marked using Verity Touch Writer, and printed vote records from Verity Duo. Verity Scan deposits scanned ballots into its ballot box for secure storage. The Verity Scan ballot box is collapsible and comes in a fabric transport bag. To set up the ballot box, position the folded ballot box as shown. Unlatch each of the 4 clips. There are 2 on each side. Pull open the ballot box. Press the side panels outward until they are flat, being careful not to pinch your hands or fingers. Lower the bottom panel, but do not press down quite yet. Release the lid by unhooking the 3 straps. Pull the string found on the underside of the lid upward to unlock the lid latch. Lift the lid while gently pulling upward and outward, ensuring that the double hinge is fully extended. Lay the lid across the top of the ballot box and then press it down. Be careful not to force it. Unlock the front door with the ballot box key. Then press firmly on the bottom panel to lock it securely into place. Setting up Verity Scan. Place the Verity Scan on the ballot box, aligning footpads with the indentations. The handle on the Verity Scan must face the front of the ballot box. Locate the cord just inside the ballot box. Pull it down and away from you in order to lock the lid and the Verity Scan into place. If your jurisdiction uses a secure ballot transport bag, position this bag inside the ballot box as shown. Close and lock the front ballot box door. Open the case and remove the power brick and power cord located inside the storage compartment. Then close the compartment and case. Plug the power cord into the power brick. And then plug the power brick into the back of the Verity Scan, flat side up. Open the Verity Scan case and lock the lid brace into place. Unlock. Unlatch and remove the tablet. Seat the tablet in the cradle. Tilt it back. Lock it in place. And check the seal. Attach privacy screens to each side of the ballot box. Plug the power cord into AC power. A green light should illuminate on the power brick when AC power is present. Now press the red button on the back of the Verity Scan to power it on.
This video is to show you how to set up a touch rider or the VAT.
Welcome to the Verity Voting System polling place training for Verity Touch Rider. The Verity voting system includes several different polling place devices. The number and type of devices used at each polling place may vary. In this video, you will learn about the Verity Touch Rider ballot marking device. Each Verity device is contained in an integrated case. The device case includes a label that identifies the type of device. The Verity Touch Rider has a red A label and a black W label. Verity Touch Rider. Verity Touch Rider is an accessible ballot marking device. Once a voter has finished voting and reviewed their choices, they will then print a paper ballot marked with their choices from the attached printer. The voter then retrieves and casts the ballot, either using Verity Scan or into a ballot box to be processed centrally. Voters may make their ballot selections with Touch Rider using either the touchscreen or using Verity Access. Verity Access is an audio-tactile interface, or ATI, intended for voters that cannot or prefer not to use the touchscreen. Verity Access includes two connection ports. The left connection port is for headphones, while the right connection port is for any dual switch input device, such as tactile switches or sip and puff devices. Setting up the ballot printer. Set up the table for your ballot printer and set the ballot printer on the table. Plug the square end of the USB printer cable into the printer. The flat end will be plugged into the Verity Touch Rider. Insert the printer power cord into the printer and the other end into a power outlet. Load the ballot printer with appropriate ballot paper for your election. Do not power on the printer at this time. Setting up the voting booth. The Verity Touch Rider booth comes in a fabric transport bag. Remove booth parts from the transport bag. A complete set of booth parts includes the booth table, rear leg assembly, front leg extensions, and privacy screens. Release bungee cords holding the booth legs if present. Unfold the legs from the booth table. Pull on the handle and lift to lock the legs into place. Attach the front leg extensions. Press the metal buttons to attach each leg and lock them into place. Attach the rear leg assembly. Press the metal buttons to attach and lock into place. Turn the booth over to set up the Verity Touch Rider. Setting up the Verity Touch Rider. Set the Verity Touch Rider on top of the booth, aligning foot pads with the indentations. The handle on the front of the Touch Rider should face the same direction as the handle on the booth. Stand at the front of the booth. Reach under the front of the booth top and push the latch away from you to secure the TouchWriter to the booth. Open the case and remove the power brick and power cord from the storage compartment. Close the compartment and case. Plug the power cord into the power brick, and then plug the power brick into the back of the Verity TouchWriter, flat side up. Plug the flat end of the USB printer cable from the ballot printer into the back of the Verity TouchWriter, with the notch facing up. Open the Verity TouchWriter case and lock the lid brace in place. Unlock, unlatch, and remove the tablet. Seat the tablet into the cradle, tilt it back, and then lock it into place. Attach privacy screens to both sides of the booth. Verify the tamper seal on the locked compartment above the printer. Plug the power cord into AC power. A green light should illuminate on the power brick when AC power is present. Now press the switch on the bottom right side of the ballot printer to power it on. Now power on the Verity TouchWriter by pressing the red button on the back of the device. If your jurisdiction uses the auto ballot barcode reader, wait until the TouchWriter finishes powering up and displays the Print Zero report screen. Then connect the auto ballot barcode reader to the USB connection located on the locked compartment above the report printer. Connect headphones to the Verity Access controller. Plug the headphones into the headphone port on the top left of Verity Access. The port on the top right of the Verity Access may be used for optional tactile switches, sip and puff, or any other dual switch input device.
Everyone should know how to replace the paper on the scan and the TouchWriter. So these are a few steps, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The first step is, as you can see, the paper may look like it's okay, but then if you look in picture 2 here, you'll see that red strip there showing that the paper is getting low. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your finger and you're going to pull that little lever up, and that will open the box. Once you open that little compartment, then you're going to take the new roll of tape and you're going to roll it as you can see in this photo here. Drop it in there like you see in number 3 there, and then you're going to close the compartment door, and then you can see the button that will shoot some excess paper out and then rip that off. One thing to remember when you're replacing ribbon that's very important, that if your zero tape or your totals tape at the end of the night, and we'll get into that more a little bit later, if those particular things and you do need to replace the tape, what you're going to need to do is let that print out. If you need to replace the tape, put new paper in, and then you can just tape those two reports together. Now let's say that fast 3 times. Let's tape the tapes together. This is just a polling place layout that is a suggestion and the way we really should have the flow of voters coming in. As you can see, the voters come in, then they should go to the instruction station. It's easy for me to say, right? The instruction station, and then go to the qualification station, which is basically the electronic poll book, which we'll get into shortly. Then they get the ballot, Then they take the ballot over to the voting location, or they mark their ballots with a touch writer there, and then they take their ballot and feed that into the tabulator or the scan unit, and then they should exit out the building. Again, each polling location is set up a little bit differently, and we realize that, and we do work with tight locations, and you will have to set it up the best that you can. Let's get started on some of the little basic stuff. First, with elections, every election inspector must take an oath before they start work on election day. We'll get into that in a few minutes. You also want to check your supplies when you get into your precincts. Make sure that you have everything. If you don't, contact your clerk and they can get you those things. It's a lot easier for them to get to it and get those supplies to you first thing in the morning. You want to also verify that your ballots have been delivered and the number of ballots that the clerk has issued you are in the container that you are working with that day. Check the seal numbers and serial numbers of the scan. Make sure, and what I'm referring to here is in the morning, just make sure that that scanner is sealed, and make sure that that touch writer is still sealed. And make sure that the equipment is set up. Some of you will have your equipment completely set up for you. Some will have to set the equipment up. So if you have any issues, make sure that you do contact your clerk immediately so they can help resolve anything that you need to do here. So let's get into some of the August primary things. First, voters should only vote in one party. Crossover votes is when an individual crosses party lines and votes for both parties. In the event that they vote in both parties, none of the votes in the partisan section of their ballot will count. Again, if someone crosses over, so if they're voting all Democratic and all of a sudden they choose one of the Republican candidates, that's considered a crossover. None of their votes for any candidates in the partisan section of the ballot will count. So we need to educate individuals on that because they just don't necessarily know that that's what it's all about. That's one of the big things that we need to make sure that we're addressing with voters, and we'll get into that in a few moments. The other thing for August is precinct delegates are on the ballot. Now, with precinct delegates in the past, we've had to do what we refer to as a precinct delegate booklet. That is no longer the case. You will just treat precinct delegates just like you treat any other office on the ballot for this election, so that should be good. And any other questions that you have for the August primary, you should contact your local clerk. Opening the polls. The first thing that we need to do when we get ready to open the polls is take the oath. This is done by the chairperson of your particular precinct. The chairperson, as you can see in this slide, has and should have already taken the oath from the clerk. Could have been the same day, or it could have been typically 2 or 3 days prior to that. But you are going to take the oath that is in number 2 there, and then you as an election inspector will be signing in section where it says all inspectors sign here. If someone comes in later on in the day, if they're working a half shift, or if they are running late on election day and everyone else has taken the oath, there is a section for additional signatures that for those individuals that can come in late, or if you're working a half shift and you come in later that day. The next thing that we do for opening the polls is we ensure the scan is set up correctly, make sure that that's done. The next thing is to make sure that the serial number and seal number, or if you want to say that the other way, the seal number and the serial number matches what's on the front of the poll book. This is a good check to make sure that you have the right scanner and make sure that you are in the right precinct. The next thing that we need to do is unlock and open the door of the ballot box. Make sure that you do this. I know it sounds ridiculous to do this, but one of the reasons that we do this is to ensure that there is no ballots that have been left in there for testing, no supplies have been accidentally left in there, whatever. You just do not want to miss a ballot that was stuck in the corner somewhere during testing, and then on election night all of a sudden your ballots don't match. So just take a few moments, open that ballot box, and just double check to make sure that there is nothing left in there. So after we get that done, now we're going to power on the scan. Make sure that you plug your scan unit into a surge protector, and the surge protector is what you should be plugging into the wall. Make sure that this power strip is on. One of the most annoying thing is to boot that scanner up and then it be on battery power, and you know you plugged that thing in. So a lot of times we just click that little button there on the power strip and it's ready to go. Then you just, on the back of the scan, you're going to push the power button. Once you push that power button, it will take about 6 or so minutes for that scan to boot up. Once booted up and once powered up, the scan should display this screen that I show here, 0 report required. Now, with that 0 report required screen, when it shows up, you want to double check a few things here before you move on. The first is you want to check your time. Make sure that your time is correct. I know that don't think that we have any daylight savings times that's going on between now and then, but that's one of the things that sometimes that we miss. But double check your timing. Make sure that it's pretty close to the time that you have. The other thing you want to verify is you want to verify on this scan or the tabulator that you have zero ballots that have been fed through this machine. You will have some lifetime numbers there. Also, make sure that you are on AC power. If you're not on AC power, try to get that resolved. If you have plugged in the way you're supposed to and you're still having issue, contact your clerk. Now, when I talked about earlier about make sure that your ballots are 0, this will show you that ballots indicate the number of ballots that was scanned and cast on your scan unit or your tabulator. The sheets is nothing more than how many sheets of paper have gone through that tabulator. Those both should be 0 when you start in the morning. The lifetime is how many ballots have been fed through that tabulator over its lifetime. It's the odometer of that machine. And of course you can see the two AC power and the battery power is what that will look like. If you do not have a battery or you're not on power, you might see a little red circle with a slash in it showing that you don't have that capability at that point in time, and you would want to get that resolved. So now, once we've double checked all those components, now we're going to print the 0 report. So how do we do that? Simple. I call it simple. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to select or tap print 0 report. What this is going to do is it's going to start printing the 0 report. Every race that is on the ballot with every candidate on the ballot will be printed on this report. Everything should be zeros. So this is important for you to make sure that everything is 0. Therefore, that's why we call it the 0 report, right? All inspectors must sign this 0 report also. You're going to leave the 0 tape attached to you're not going to tear this off. You want to keep and make sure that it stays attached to that roll. We'll get into that later. Once the zero tape is completed and all inspectors have signed it, the next screen you're going to see is ready to open the polls. So what you're going to do here is you're going to select Open the Polls button. Once you select that, you're going to see Enter the Open Polls code screen, and this is where you're going to enter a 6-digit code that is provided to you by your local clerk. Enter that code and push Accept. Then a small Open Polls report will print. That report does not need to be signed by the inspectors, but it will stay attached to the zero report. Now at this point, we talked about keeping all of this report attached. So in order to make sure that that tape doesn't walk off during the day or accidentally gets ripped off or anything like that, what we're going to do is we're going to open the paper compartment, and we're going to take that roll out, and we're going to roll that paper all the way back up onto the spindle, and then we're going to drop that roll of tape back into the printer compartment, and that's going to save that zero and open polls tape for the day, as our equipment does not require any printing during the day. The screen that you'll see next should say Ballot Scanner Ready for Use. This is now ready for your first voter to cast their ballot. You'll also see 2 green arrows flashing that will instruct the voter how to feed and where to feed their ballot in. So now let's move to opening the polls on the TouchWriter. The first thing, you will look for the serial number and the seal number and compare that to the poll book. Next, you're going to power on the TouchWriter. Now remember, the TouchWriter has an extra component, which is the printer. So you're going to plug the power cord from the TouchWriter and the power cord from the printer into the power strip, and you want to turn on the printer first. So you want to make sure that the printer is turned on before you power on the TouchWriter. The other thing that you will have to do here is make sure that your printer is plugged into your TouchWriter. You will have that printer cable that you will also plug into. Once you do that, you're going to power on the printer again. Then you will power on the TouchWriter with the red button in the back. The first screen that you should see once you power on is Enter Open Polls Code. That is the first screen you should see. If you happen to see this screen that says Enter the Closed Polls Code, stop what you're doing and contact your clerk immediately, because there is an issue or an error that has to be resolved from your clerk. So once you do receive the Enter Open Polls Code screen, again, we're going to verify that the time is correct. We're going to verify that we're on AC power, not on battery power. And we're also going to look at the ballots and the sheet numbers. One thing to remember with the TouchWriter is, again, with testing, and remember what I said at the beginning, is a TouchWriter or a VAT is only a ballot marking device. It only marks the ballot. It does not tally any votes. So therefore, during our testing process, you may see on a VAT that there has been ballots printed off of this particular VAT. And that will be okay, because it is only a ballot marking device. Now this again shows ballots, sheets, lifetime, just like the scanner or the tabulator, with the exception of the ballots on this one on a TouchWriter may show some numbers there, and it may show the amount of sheets that went through also, and that is okay on the TouchWriter. make sure that you're on AC power also. Now, back to enter the open polls code screen. So after you verified all that information on the previous screens, you're going to enter that 6-digit open polls code and push accept. This will then print a small open polls tape that you will tear off and put into the local clerk's envelope. Then you should see this screen that says accessible ballot marking ready for use. To get started, contact a poll worker. This is your new VAT screen that shows that you are ready for your first voter. So we have opened the scanner and got that up and ready for our first voter. We've opened the touch writer. That is up and ready and going for the first voter. We also have different instructions for those that are opening and getting the electronic poll book up and running for voters. And your local clerk will provide instructions for that. But there are other things that we need to do also. We need to open the ballot container and remove the ballots and get those ballots on the table ready for issuance. We need to, when we do that, we need to check to make sure that we have the right ballots. If I'm working precinct 1, I should have precinct 1 ballots. I know that's kind of redundant, but we need to make sure that we do that. Check to make sure if I have different ballot styles. Some of you that have splits will have 2 different ballot styles, so double check that. And then you also want to make sure that all your workstations are set up and your voting booths are set up. So this is all part of opening the polls on election day. Processing voters. So the first thing that we all want to remember is we want to be helpful. Remember, voters only vote once, twice a year. Some voters only once at the presidential election. So we want to make sure that we make this as pleasant and as good as we possibly can for each and every voter. You can ask the voter questions. Make sure that they are in the right location. Voters tend to remember, hey, I voted here, 4 years ago, and maybe we've made changes to the polling locations or so forth. And 4 years ago, maybe they did vote there, but they're not voting here now because we've made changes. So just be helpful. Remember, treat voters as you would like to be treated. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and show processing voters video so you don't have to listen to me for a change.
Processing voters. As the voter enters the polling location, greet the voter and instruct the voter how to complete the application to vote. Ask the voter if he or she has photo ID. The following types of photo ID qualify as acceptable: driver's license or personal identification card issued by Michigan or another state, federal or state government issued photo identification, U.S. passport, military identification card with photo, student identification with photo from a high school or an accredited institution of higher education, tribal identification card with photo. If a voter does not have valid photo ID in his or her possession at the polls, that voter is still welcome to vote under Michigan law. These voters simply have to sign a separate affidavit attesting to their identity, and their ballots are tabulated normally. When using the electronic poll book, swipe the voter's driver's license or type the voter's name into the appropriate field to find the voter's record. Verify that the information in the e-poll book is the same as what the voter has indicated on the application to vote. If you have a split precinct, this is the time to confirm which ballot style the voter should receive and communicate that to the ballot station inspector. If the voter's information is not correct, or a status flag is found next to the voter's name in the e-poll book, take the necessary steps to ensure the voter is eligible for a ballot. Then ask the election inspector at the ballot station what the next ballot number is, and enter it into the e-poll book. The election inspector at the ballot station completes the inspector portion of the application to vote, including the ballot number and voter number. The election inspector gives the voter the ballot in a secrecy sleeve and the application to vote. Make sure a booth is available for the voter and provide the voter with brief instructions on how to properly mark the ballot. An election inspector should be waiting between the voting booths and the tabulator. This election inspector should be at least 10 feet from the tabulator. For each voter, verify that the ballot number listed on the application to vote is the same ballot number the voter presents to you. Then remove the ballot stub from the ballot and instruct the voter on how to insert the ballot into the tabulator. It's very important to ensure the privacy of the voter's ballot at all times. If the tabulator rejects the voter's ballot for any reason, be prepared to assist the voter and explain how the voter can correct any errors.
Now we're going to walk through each station with a little bit more in depth so you'll have an idea of which stations do what, and hopefully this will give you a better understanding of our process. So station 1 is the applications to vote. Every voter that comes into the voting location or the polling precinct has to fill out an application to vote in order to cast their ballot. So this particular station is important because this can also, if you know, this can help, and if you know which precinct and where your locations are, this can kind of mitigate those individuals in coming into the wrong precinct. Those of you that have multiple precincts in one polling location can kind of direct these individuals to their particular right precincts. So at the applications to vote station, you're going to have the voter complete an application to vote. And then you're going to direct them to the station number 2. Completing the application to vote. So the voter fills out the first information, which is going to be their signature, printed name, their date of birth, and their street address, residential address. Once that is completed, you're going to ensure that the date of the election is filled in, the precinct number is filled in. Now the approval to vote, where you see the inspector initials, the ballot number, and the voter number, station 2 is going to complete that. And the other component that the station 2 will complete will be the voter number and the voter name or number on this tear-off stub that some jurisdictions will use. Now you see in the middle of this inspector there is a ballot style. That needs to be completed only if you have a split precinct, for example. So in this case, PCS stands for Pinckney Community Schools. So if you had a split precinct that had some Pinckney School District in it, then you would write that particular one down. If you do not have a split, you don't really need a ballot style in there. The next is verifying the voter's identity. Now, with the driver's license, there are 2 components that we're looking for checking the voter identity. The first is this the same person in front of us? Again, we're not identity specialist, but again, we're looking to make sure that the photo in the picture resembles the person in front of us. The other thing we're looking for is the name, to make sure that the name is correct. Now, we're not always looking for the address because we're taking the address that is on the application to vote. We'll get into that a little bit later if there's a difference here. At the bottom of the page here, you see the driver's license, state personal ID. Those identifications that are from Michigan can be expired, especially with what we've been going on with this pandemic that's been going on. There may definitely be some expired driver's license out there. Again, the two components we're looking for is the photo matches the individual that's standing before us and their name matches. The other forms of ID, the current federal or state ID, current passport, current military ID, current student ID, or current tribal ID. You notice those all have to be current. So according to law, those IDs have to be current. Now, if the voter doesn't have a photo ID with them, they're not in possession of a photo ID, they may sign the affidavit of voter not in possession of photo ID. You will have the voter print their name at the top there, then they will sign this affidavit, and you will put the date of the election down below, and you will sign as election inspector, verifying that you witnessed their signatures. Now, one of the other things with these affidavit of voters not in possession of IDs, we track these to report back to how many people have signed these. So check with your local clerks, but we need to identify how many of these were issued in your precinct. So put a paper clip on them to identify them, put fold down one of the corners, put a sticky on it. Any of those things to identify that for the local clerk would be helpful. So after station 1, we have station 2, the electronic poll book. This is where we verify the voter's eligibility to vote in this particular precinct. We are going to process the voter in the electronic poll book. We're going to initial, remember where we had to those inspector initials on the application to vote, that's where we're going to initial that. We're going to record the voter number from the electronic poll book, and we're also going to issue a ballot number and issue that in the electronic poll book from the stack of physical ballots that we have sitting next to us. This all goes into the electronic poll book, and if there are issues with the voter as far as having a status flag or potentially not being in the electronic poll book, then we would send that voter to the help desk. Let's talk a little bit about the electronic poll book now. So here is the process for issuing a ballot in the electronic poll book. So as you saw in the video earlier, you're going to swipe the driver's license through the magnetic strip, or you can start typing the voter's last name and it'll reduce the list down to those individuals with that last name. Then you would click on that particular or select that particular voter from that list, make sure it's correct. Then you're going to lock the voter in. Then you will look to verify the voter's information, make sure it's the correct name, make sure your correct date of birth, and the address. And then you're going to click regular ballot, and then you're going to enter the ballot number in the box that says this ballot number will be assigned. Once you enter that first ballot number of the day, it should auto increment every time that you select that. So every time that you select a voter, that is your voter number. So the electronic poll book will be issuing you the ballot, the voter number, and you will then issue the ballot number from the stack of ballots that you have. So here are a couple of screenshots from the electronic poll book that I like to show. Number 2 is where we're verifying the information. There's the name, the date of birth, the address, the precinct number. Number 3 is the regular ballot, so that's where you're going to click once you verify that information. Yes, regular ballot. And then it will pull up this screen is that you're about to issue a regular ballot to this individual, and this is where you will verify, number 4 there, the correct ballot number that you're going to enter in. Remember, the very first ballot that you enter of the day, you will have to enter that number, and then everything should auto increment after that. Then you're going to click OK. Once you click OK, you should see this screen here that says just perform the following actions, so you can double check to make sure that you issued this person the correct ballot. You will also notice here on the far right the list of voters. That is the voter number, and it'll tell you the person, and it'll tell you that the ballot number that was issued. Now this particular station is referred to as the help desk, or I like to refer to it most of the time as the chairperson. Chairpersons have a lot of responsibility for their precincts, but it all boils down to how everyone works together. But with the help desk, if we find that we have an issue with a voter because they're not on the list, or that they have status flags that we'll talk about shortly, and some other things, is that you want to pull that voter potentially to the side or have the chairperson to come and help that voter. So therefore we're not slowing down the other voters that are coming through to vote, and then the chairperson can help and get that individual, or the help desk can get that individual's situation resolved, and we can continue to move on. So the help desk is very, very important, or slash chairperson or co-chair also in some cases. Now, we talked about voters that the typical come in, fill out their application, they put their current address on their application to vote. Well, what happens if on the application to vote they put a different address than what's in the qualified voter file? So at this point in time, you can ask them, have you moved to a new location? Sometimes it's just down the road, around the corner, what have you, and yes, it needs to be updated in our voter registration. So this particular form is election day change of address or authorization to transfer their voter registration. Remember, if they are in the electronic poll book, then they should be eligible to vote in your precinct on election day. However, they can update their address with that local clerk, or if they also happen to be someone that perhaps maybe they just recently moved to the jurisdiction across the street from them. If that's the case, then we can still take this form and we can forward that to their local clerk and have their voter registration updated. So, but if they move to a new jurisdiction, and if it has been less than 60 days before the election, the voter can vote at the old precinct one last time. Okay, repeat that again. So if it has been less than 60 days that the voter has moved, they can vote one last time at their old precinct, meaning they should be on your electronic poll book. Then they can go ahead and complete this form, and we can forward that to the new clerk. If it's been more than 60 days that they've moved, they should not be on your electronic poll book, and they should go vote at their new jurisdiction. Now this is the status flags that we've been kind of referring to back and forth. A status flag in the electronic poll book will be a little red question mark next to the voter's name, and then in the electronic poll book you will see what that particular status flag stands for. Some of the most normal ones that we see is an absent voter ballot has been sent and received from that voter. Obviously, we'll get into that in a few moments. Some of these other things that can be resolved right at the electronic poll book without sending them to the help desk or getting the chair involved is an ID requirement. Sometimes you will see a little question mark that it says that to verify that person's identification. Well, if they have their ID with them, you've already verified their identification. There are some other things there that I'll let you look through this list to verify, surrender license, or confirm address. And at that point in time, what you're looking for is to make sure that the person in front of you and you're going to confirm their address. So it's a very simple process. However, you get into some of these more additional things, a voter that's moved, or a voter that needs to sign a registration card. You want to possibly get the chairperson or someone involved and have, because these are things that will take extra steps as opposed to just verifying a couple of things on the electronic poll book and then moving on. So as I mentioned before, one of the most common status flags is an absent voter appearing before you in the polls. So this slide shows a few different things that can happen here. First, if a voter brings in their absentee ballot to you and says, I want to drop this off and it's already voted, it's ready to go, you cannot accept that voter ballot. All voted absent voter ballots that they are needing to drop off for processing has to be dropped off at the city or township hall. So that's number one. So if they're bringing in a ballot and wanting to just drop it off to you strictly for processing, they have to drop that at city hall or township hall. Now, let's get a little more fun with this. If a voter comes in, they have their absentee ballot with them, and they said, I got this in the mail, but I want to vote in the precinct instead. So that's great. They can do that. That is not a problem. So you're going to make sure that they have their ballot, that absentee ballot, put into their envelope, seal that envelope. You're going to write spoiled on that envelope. That absent voter ballot with spoiled written on it is going to go into the local clerk's envelope, and you're going to process the voter just as normal. You're going to issue them, have them fill out an application to vote, check their ID, check them in the electronic poll book, issue them a ballot, they vote it. Great. The second type of absent voter that may come in is they're going to fill out an application to vote. They're going to go to the electronic poll book station. That person is going to pull them up, and they're going to see a little question mark next to their name, and it's below in the very bottom. It's going to say an AV ballot was sent to that individual. If it says the AV ballot was sent, that means that the ballot was sent to that individual. And they're like, well, I never received it. I don't know where it's at. So there is a small little affidavit form that they should complete that says that I, such and such, I, Mary JQ voter, did not receive or never received, or it got destroyed, dog ate it, whatever, and I want to vote in the polls. While they're filling that out, you need to make sure that you call the local clerk. Make sure the local clerk has not received their absent voter ballot through the mail system, or it might have been dropped off. So you want to ensure that the clerk has not received their ballot. If the clerk has not received their ballot, they fill out the affidavit. you issue them a regular ballot just like you would normally. The other option is if a voter, for example, comes in and fills out an application to vote, gives you their ID, you pull them up in the electronic poll book, and you notice that the voter was marked AV ballot sent/received. If it says AV ballot sent/received, that means that voter was sent an absentee ballot, that voter voted that ballot and was sent that ballot back to the local clerk. That person has already voted. They cannot vote twice. And I know that's kind of funny, but some people may forget that they voted their absentee ballots. Doesn't happen very often, but it could. So just remember, if it says AV ballot sent/received, they don't get to vote twice. So, Station 3, what are we going to do here? So, at Station 3 is where the ballots are stacked in a physical manner, and here are my paper physical ballots. Now, most of the time, what you are doing here in this is you're taking your secrecy folder and you're putting one ballot in each one of those secrecy folders, getting ready for voters to come through. Remember, please remember, these ballots do sometimes stick together due to humidity and other reasons. Make sure that you are looking at the numbers as you're pre-sorting these ballots into the secrecy folders, that you don't put two in there by mistake. So this is what you're doing. Station 3, you have the physical ballots. Station 2, you will be telling Station 2, okay, this voter is voter number 1 that comes in. The first ballot that you're going to issue, let's say it's 101, so you're going to communicate that to the electronic poll book person saying this is ballot number 101, and they're going to tell you it's voter number 1. So you're going to make sure on the application to vote, you or the electronic poll book person is going to initial that. You're going to put ballot number 101. You're going to put voter number 1. And then you're going to put that tear off of the application to vote or the application to vote in that pouch on the secrecy folder. And then you're going to hand the voter that ballot in that secrecy folder and instruct them over to the voting location. One of the other important things for Station 3 here is this is a perfect opportunity to give instruction. So, what do I mean by instructions? First, make sure that they know to fill out that rectangle completely. If you may have a visual aid right in front of you if that's what you want to do, but verbally tell them to do that. And it only takes a few seconds. As you're handing them the ballot and saying, ma'am, sir, also don't forget to fill out that rectangle completely while you're voting. Oh, and by the way, this is a primary, and you should only vote in one party on this election. And that's what I'm talking about as far as offering instructions to the voter. This is a key point to do this, because that way that voter will then make your life nice and make your election day run really smooth by offering those two little tidbits, particularly of this particular August election. And as you're looking at your voting booths, we have something that's new that was settled in a lawsuit in the state of Michigan. We do not, and I repeat, we do not have ballot selfies in the state of Michigan. It is still illegal to take a photo of you and your ballot. However, in Michigan, the voter may take a photo of their ballot while they're in the voting booth. I know. How are we going to police this? Well, we're going to have to do the best that we can. The law basically says that they can take a photo of their ballot while they're in the voting booth. As of this moment, we have not had that many issues with, we actually haven't had any issues with this at this point. However, if you happen to see someone that takes a picture of themselves and their ballot, you may approach those individuals and let them know that it is illegal to take a ballot selfie. However, they can take a photo of just their ballot. And you can ask them to delete the photo of themselves with the ballot, or quote, the ballot selfie. If they refuse, just let them know that you're going to notate their name and address, their name in the official election documents, and maybe that might have them to delete that photo. However, this is not something that we want to promote, and is not something that we really want to get into an argument with the voter on. We're going to have to police this the best that we can. It is against the law for them to take a ballot selfie. However, they can take a picture of their ballot while they're in the voting booth. Voters not on the list. Voters not on your list have options. What does this mean that they're not on your list? That means that when you pull them up in the electronic poll book, they are not in your precinct. There is an other tab in your electronic precinct list. If you click on other and their name appears there, that means that they are just in the wrong precinct, and you should direct them to go to the correct precinct. However, if you find that you pull someone, you type in their name or you swipe their driver's license in the electronic poll book and they are not on the list in your precinct or the other precinct, then what you need to do is determine a couple of things. First, you can ask the voter, do you have a receipt from the local clerk, which we'll get into momentarily. If they do, then we will issue them a ballot, and we'll get into that in just a moment. If they do not have a receipt from the local clerk, then you need to direct them to go to the local clerk where they can register to vote and vote right then and there, and everything is great. Now that means they will have to leave your precinct and go to the township or city hall, but they can do that and they will be able to vote there at the city or township hall. However, if they choose not to do that option, then you may have to start the provisional ballot process. So this is where, again, they don't want to go to the city or township clerk's office to register. Then you may have to start the provisional ballot process. I'm not going to get into how to issue a provisional ballot in this training. It is in your training manual, and your chairpersons and your local clerks can walk you through how to do that. But in your election supplies, there is a big envelope that says provisional ballot, and there are two types of provisional ballots that may be issued, which is an affidavit or envelope ballot. However, what I really want to focus on here is the same-day registration. Voters have that capability. They just will have to leave your precinct and go to the local city or township clerks. So what does that look like for us? And this is what we're going to get into momentarily. Now, this is same-day registration diagram. Yeah, it looks complicated, yet it is not very complicated. Trust me, it's pretty easy. So the first question is, did the voter register at the clerk's office? So in the situation that I just talked about, Do they have a voter registration receipt, which we'll get into in a moment? If they did, yes, you follow over to the left side. If they don't, and they say no, then you go to the right side of this diagram. Is the voter willing to travel to the clerk's office? Yes or no? If yes, they go to the clerk's office. They and get registered to vote and vote. Or if they say no, then you will have to get into the provisional ballot process. So that's all this is basically that particular diagram. So, what does a voter registration receipt look like? And here is an example of that. This is an individual that went to the local clerk's office and registered to vote on election day, or the voter may register from 14 days prior to the election to 0 days, which 0 meaning election day, and they would then have this receipt to present to you at the polling location or at your precinct. Just remember that most voters that aren't on your list and you instruct them to go to your city or township clerk to register, the city and township clerk is going to register them to vote and typically issue them a ballot right there at the city or township hall so they can vote in the election. Most will not return back to you with this voter registration receipt. But if I don't tell you, they will. They sure as will someone return back, and then you won't know what to do, and you'll call me and it'll be my fault. No, it's not my fault, but I just want to make sure that you're comfortable when you receive these clerk's office voter registration receipts. The example that I have here is this person went to the clerk's office, they registered to vote, and they come back and they want to vote in the precinct. So how do I do that? A couple of things on this receipt. You see this circle that I have there, the red circle? It says there's a little CH out next to that. That means and stands for challenged. And there are 4 little instructions there that dictate how you issue a challenged ballot to this individual. So verification is done at the clerk's office. That's something that we don't need to worry about at the precincts. However, when this receipt comes back to us, if it has the CH, we have to issue a challenged ballot to that voter. If it does not have a CH down there, so if you get one of these that does not have that CH and have that information in there, you issue that voter a regular ballot. So if it doesn't have CH, regular ballot. If it has a CH, you will have to issue that individual a challenged ballot. Now, as you can see on the bottom of the receipt, there is the application to vote that's going to be completed. Now, you can cut that out and use that, or you can have the voter complete a new voter application to vote. Okay, that is up to you and your chairperson and your local clerk how you choose to do that. So, first, let's get into how do we issue a challenged ballot. Issuing a challenged ballot is simple. Well, it is for me, and it is for you. Trust me, it is. All we do is we take the next available ballot that we're going to issue to the voter, and we take the ballot number that is written on the ballot stub, or printed on the ballot stub, and we take that number and we write that in the white space there on the ballot, as you can see in this example, with a pen or pencil. And then you're going to conceal that number with a white piece of paper. Make sure you don't cover up any of the marks or on the ballot, but you're going to cover that number up, and that's it. That's how you issue a physical ballot to a challenged voter. Why do we do that? We issue that because in the event, the only time a challenged ballot could be pulled and the votes be taken away would be from or by a court order. So, but we then have to be able to identify that ballot some way, form, or fashion, because remember, once the ballot goes in the tabulator, nobody knows which ballot is whose. So in this case, then we would look for a ballot that had a little piece of tape on it, and then we could then verify that that particular ballot was a challenged ballot. So here's how we're going to issue a voter that is not on the list, that has come back to us with either a receipt, and in this case example that I'm going to show you is we're going to issue them a challenged ballot in this situation. Not every receipt or voter that comes back to you will be issued a challenged ballot, and you would just issue them a regular ballot like you always would. But remember, these are individuals that were not originally on your list, so you will have to add them in the electronic poll book, which is what I'm showing you here now. So you're going to go to the Unlisted tab, you're going to click New, and then you're going to add, once you click New, this little window pops up, and you're going to add their name from the information that's provided from the clerk on that receipt, and then you're going to click OK. Then in the case or the example that I want to show you is that we're going to issue this individual a challenge ballot. So after you've entered them in the QVF, you're going to lock the voter in, and then you're going to choose, like number 1 there shows, challenged ballot. So you're going to click on challenged ballot in this case instead of regular ballot. And then you're going to issue the ballot just like you would normally, put in the next ballot number that you're issuing, click OK, and that's it's all you have to do. Okay, if this was an individual where the receipt was just a regular ballot, you would just choose regular ballot and issue them a regular ballot like you have been doing all day. Touch Writer, Voted Assisted Terminal, or the VAT. Let's talk about that. So this is a cute little description of our Voted Assisted Terminal, or our VAT. We want to encourage voters to use our VAT in the event that they need to use this event. We don't want to just put it in the corner and just leave it set. We want to make sure that voters know that we have this device available for assistance. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that voters know about it? Well, first I suggest you, as an election inspector, you learn how to use it, and maybe that will show other people that, hey, it is really a good tool to use. And if you're one of those inspectors that really know how to use the VAT, teach other inspectors. And then you can tell all the voters that come in. Remember, the Voter Assisted Terminal is not just for disability people. It is also for anyone that wants to use this new technology. So how do we assist voters? Again, we talked, and we're going to talk more about the Voter Assisted Terminal, or the VAT. That is number 1 way that we can help voters. Another way, though, that we help voters is having two inspectors of different parties to assist voters. That is absolutely critical, to have 2 inspectors of different parties, so there is no issue from perception or from voters. How do we do that? So if someone comes into your location and they need assistance, then you should ask them the question, because they will tell you, for example, I have my legal guardian here to help me vote today. And if that's the case, then you need to ask the voter, are you requesting assistance to vote by reason of blindness, disability, or inability to read or write? They should answer yes. Then you're going to look to that person, that other person, or that legal guardian in this example, and ask them, are you the voter's employer or agent of that employer, or an officer or agent of a union to which the voter belongs? They should answer no. If they answer yes, they are ineligible to help the voter. If they answer no, then yes, they are allowed to assist that voter in the voting booth and at the tabulator if they need it. Now here is just an example of the things for the VAT paddle that I call it the paddle. It is actually called the Verity Access paddle. But headphones are plugged into the paddle and the ballot is read to the voter. Also, a disabilities person may have their own device that they want to plug into to the device to use, and that is, you can see in this example, the disabled access jack, that they can plug in other devices to that. So you want to be familiar with that. When a voter comes in and wants to use the VAT, or you've suggested them to use the VAT and they say, sure, let's do that. Here are the steps that we're going to walk through, and here are the list of steps here that I'll show that says basically you're going to, in the electronic poll book, you're going to lock the voter in. You're going to assign them the next physical ballot that is on the stack. You're going to record the ballot number on the application to vote and the voter number. And then this is the step that is a little bit scary, but it's not. But then at this point, because the person is going to use the VAT, and remember, the VAT prints the ballot, correct? So what you're going to do is you're going to detach the stub, the ballot stub, from that ballot, and then you're going to take the ballot stub and the application to vote stub, or the application to vote, and put that in the secrecy pouch. And then you're going to take that ballot, that blank ballot that you have from that stub, and you're going to write VAT on it. And then you're going to place that ballot into, that blank ballot into a VAT ballot storage envelope. Then you will take the voter over to the voter assisted terminal. This is just a photo demonstration of what I just talked about, issuing the voter. And as you can see, the voter appears with the application to vote. You issue the next ballot. You hand the voter, in this case, the ballot stub and the application to vote. It should be in a secrecy folder, not just in his hand. And then you place the ballot, blank ballot, into the voter or the VAT ballot storage envelope, which is green. Once we've issued the VAT ballot in the electronic poll book and we've taken the voter over to the VAT or the voter assisted terminal or the touch writer, now we have to prepare the ballot so he can vote or she can vote on the VAT. How do we do that? So the new process is that we, on the front screen, you see what I have circled here, and the screen says ready for use. You push and hold that, and the next screen that will appear will say enter poll worker code. However, if you want, you can also reach behind the machine and push the blue poll worker button, and the next screen, just like it says enter poll worker code, will appear. Once that appears, you will enter your poll worker code, which is provided by your local clerk. You push accept, and then the next screen will show poll worker task, and you want to activate ballot. So you want to press activate ballot. Once you've activated the ballot, the next screen shows select a precinct from the list. So you will have to select a precinct. Remember, VATs may be shared with multiple precincts. Some precincts have 1, 2, 3, or 4 precincts located in one polling location, and there may only be using one VAT. So you will need to select the appropriate precinct. Press OK. Then you have the confirm selection screen that shows. Okay, did I choose the right precinct? If I did, then yes, activate the ballot. Once the yes activate ballot button has been pressed, the next screen you're going to see is this. To get started, touch here. This is when you tell the voter your ballot is now ready to access. So the voter is going to either push or select get started, or they're going to move the wheel on the device. The voter then will choose whether or not they want help in changing the settings on the device, or if they want to skip directly to voting. The voter will begin voting by tapping the Begin Vote button or by using the paddle, moving the Move button on the paddle. The voter then begins making selections. The voter can review their choices, they can make changes in their choices, and then there is a bar at the bottom if there are additional choices that they need to make. Once they've made their choices and they've reviewed their choices, the screen will appear to remind them that they must print their ballot. And they will say yes, print their ballot, and their ballot will then print. This particular ballot will be long, so the printer will print the one side and then come out, and then it'll go back in, and then it'll print the second page. You want to instruct the voter, do not pull that ballot out until it is done printing. Then the voter puts that ballot into the secrecy folder, and then the ballot and the voter goes to the tabulator inspector. This is just a brochure that we put in our training material to just give you some helpful hints on how to treat voters with disabilities. Remember, the golden rule, treat other people how you want to be treated, is primarily the same thing. But one of the things that I always like to bring attention to when you have individuals with disabilities, this is just a human nature, is especially if someone comes in with a helper. We like to focus our attention to the helper instead of the person with a disability a lot of times. And we really should be talking to the voter or the person with the disability in this case. Make sure that we're talking directly to them, not to their helper. That is just one thing that we can do to ensure that we're treating people fairly. Okay, now we have done Station 1, which is the application to vote. We have talked about Station 2, which is the electronic poll book, which has a lot of good stuff that we have to deal with the electronic poll book. We've actually talked about Station 3, which is actually the ballots and the actual physical ballots that we have. Station 4 or 3, however you look at it, is really the help desk. That is the chairperson most times that are helping us. But then we move to number 5, station number 5, which is what I refer to as the tabulator inspector. This particular individual is the one that the voter has moved through the process. They voted their ballot. Now they come to the ballot tabulator ready to tabulate their ballot. First and foremost, you should be 10 feet from the tabulator. I know it is very you feel like you're miles away, but you should be far enough away that you can keep an eye, but you should be close enough within 10 feet to make sure that everything is good with that. So what do? As a tabulator inspector, the voter brings you over the ballot that has been voted. The ballot stub is at the top, so you should confirm that the ballot number on the stub matches what's on the application to vote or that application to vote tear-off. Then you are going to remove the ballot stub for the voter. Remember that the voter then will feed this ballot into that tabulator. It is a scanner, so I suggest that you pull that ballot up as far as you can out of that secrecy folder. Do not expose any votes, but as far as you can pull it up, so the voter, when they feed it in, that scanner will grab that ballot and feed it in. So you want to bring that ballot up a little bit if you can. Okay. The other thing the inspector is going to do, you're going to explain why the tabulator rejects a ballot, if it does reject a ballot. And then you may direct that voter back to station 2. We'll get into that here in just a moment. One of the other things is that you can also do is during the day as a tabulator inspector is that you and one other inspector, two different parties, can also open that ballot container to ensure that all ballots are continuously falling and that they don't particularly cause a jam. Again, here's just a quick reminder, 10-foot rule. Rejected ballots, make sure that if a ballot gets rejected, that just ensure that you maintain secrecy of that. And there are scripts that are provided by your local clerk if you need to use those. As a tabulator inspector, as I mentioned, Station 5, you will get rejected ballots. Rejected ballots could be for multiple different reasons. Rejected ballots could be that the voter put check marks instead of coloring in the rectangle completely, and that the tabulator can't see all of those marks. That would be a reason that it could be rejected. The tabulator will give you an error message. The tabulator would give you a message and reject that ballot if the voter voted a blank ballot. So with rejected ballots, it always gives you a reason why the ballot was rejected, so the voter has the ability to fix that error if they choose to. If they do not, the voter has the option to cast the ballot as is. Spoiled ballots. This is the fun portion of our job. Voters tend to, especially for an August primary that we have on this particular election, they will spoil their ballots by voting and doing crossover votes. We talked a little bit about earlier about what a crossover vote is. That means basically that they are voting one particular party, and then maybe they flip the ballot over and all of a sudden they were voting at one particular party and they see a name in the opposite party that they really know and they want to vote for that person. If they do that, that is a crossover vote. The tabulator will reject that ballot and say that they voted for more than one political party. The voter has the option, again, to cast that ballot as is. If they cast that ballot as is, no votes for any of the partisan candidates will count. That means 0, no votes will count for any of the other candidates that they selected. On your closing tapes, it will show as invalid votes for that individual if they accept the ballot as is. Now, I talked about spoiled ballots. That's why we're talking about that now, is because a lot of voters will make that minor mistake and they will want to correct that. Then they will take their ballot back to Station 2, the electronic poll book, or you will escort them over there. They take the ballot over to Station 2 and we are going to spoil their ballot. How do we do that? First, we write spoiled on the ballot. Make sure you're not looking at votes. So this is Inspector Station number 2, the electronic poll book person. You're going to place that ballot in an envelope that says spoiled ballot envelope. Then you're going to bring that voter back up in the electronic poll book. You're going to lock the voter in. You're going to choose spoil ballot. Spoil that ballot. It will ask you, are you sure you want to spoil the ballot? Yes, I want to spoil this ballot. Then it spoils the ballot. Then you will have to immediately lock that voter back in, and now you're going to issue a brand new ballot in the stack. So then you will have to issue a regular ballot to that individual. It will be the next ballot number. On the application to vote, you will line out the ballot, the original ballot number, and you will write the new ballot number on there. And then you hand the voter the new ballot with their application to vote tear off or their application to vote. They go vote the ballot. Hopefully they stay in one party this time, and then they cast their ballot. So that's how you do a spoiled ballot. Exposed ballots are those individuals, or not individuals, but that is, and it typically could be an individual that deliberately, hey, look how I voted this and blah blah blah. That would be considered an exposed ballot. Fortunately, we do not have very many cases, even if we have any cases of exposed ballots. But if that's the event or the case that happens, you would have to reject that ballot in the electronic poll book, and that person would not be eligible for a new ballot. Here is a copy of the script that I spoke about earlier as far as handling an overvote or a crossover vote or even a blank ballot in the tabulator. These are scripts that literally you could read word for word to the voter if you chose to. Your local clerk could provide these to you. Here are some screenshots of what the tabulator may or may not say in the event. For example, here's an overvote. You chose too many choices in a particular contest. Here is also an example of a ballot jam. If your tabulator has a ballot jam, it will tell you if the ballot that jammed it counted or not. So look at these two screens. It says your ballot has a jam. Your ballot was counted. That means you do not want to feed that ballot back through. Pull the jam out, put it in the bottom of the ballot box, and you're good to go. On this other one, it says your ballot did not scan, so then you would have to refeed that ballot through. Ensure that as the tabulator inspector that you are instructing each and every voter that comes up that once they feed their ballot in, they will see a please wait processing. Make sure that you tell them to wait for that flag before they leave the polling, the tabulator. Make sure that you wait for that flag before you leave the tabulator. Very important. That way their ballot has been cast. Processing absent voter ballots in a precinct. We only have a few jurisdictions that do this, but here are a few things to remember in the event that you're doing this. First, we have to determine the legality of the ballot, meaning verify the signature, verify registration. Most of this step is done at the local clerk's office. When you get the ballot to process, that has already been taken care of in the clerk's office. But remember, as you're processing ballots in the precinct, do them in multiples. Make sure you have a team of two, minimum of two with different parties, and hold back a few of the ballots for the secrecy. You're also going to be entering the information either into the electronic poll book, or you're going to have an AV list to be processing those. So your local clerk will train you more on this if you're one of these individuals that that will be processing absent voter ballots in the precinct. So if you are processing AVs in the precinct, make sure that you're taking a look at absentees that were rejected by the tabulator. Remember, if you're processing AVs in the precinct, that these AVs individuals are not present to correct their mistakes if there is a mistake that has been made. Make sure that you have two people, a reader and a checker, in order to do these duplications. And again, like I said before, your local clerk will provide you with additional training if you're one of those jurisdictions that process AV ballots in the precinct, which most do not. Here are a couple of examples for duplication that in the event that the ballot would be rejected because of a false overvote. In this situation, in the first one, you can see the person very blatantly noted that they didn't mean to vote for that particular first person. They wanted to vote for the second person. You would have to correct that. The other example here is an invalid write-in vote. Mickey Mouse, unfortunately, is not a valid write-in candidate. So you have to correct that. Our ballot boxes come with an auxiliary bin in the event that something were to happen with our tabulator. As you can see in these two slides here, feeding the ballot into the auxiliary bin on the left here. But just remember, if you happen to put a ballot in there for any reason, make sure that you retrieve it and process it appropriately at the end of the night. A couple of good things to know is poll watchers and challengers. We do tend to have these individuals that show up at our precincts from time to time. A poll watcher is nothing more than an individual that is there to watch what you are doing and watch what happens in the voting process. These individuals are simply there to observe. So you ask them to sit in the public area and they can observe the process. Challengers, on the other hand, are typically appointed by the political parties. Challengers have to have credentials, and challengers have to talk with the chairperson and let the chairperson know that they are there. Then you can read down these rules here that you want to be familiar with, but we also, in our election manual, there is a spreadsheet that has a table that actually has what poll watchers and what challengers can and cannot do, which is very important. Challengers have the right to vote, have the right to challenge a voter's right to vote, but they can't be disorderly, and they must be registered voters of Michigan. They can view the poll book. They can be behind the poll worker tables, but remember, they are not to be disruptive of the process. So if you have more questions on challengers, make sure that you ask your local clerks about that. Also, too, with campaigning, this is election season, and we will have campaigners out in our parking lots for campaigns and so forth. Remember, it is 100 feet from the entrance of the polling location. Make sure that they are staying that 100 feet away. Now remember, if you don't feel comfortable approaching someone, don't do that. Talk with your chairperson. Your chairperson will, in turn, if they don't feel comfortable, contact their local clerk. But this is everybody's job as an election inspector. What does that mean? Simply this is, just so happens you're going to lunch or going to the restroom real quick, and you walk by the entrance and you see someone that is on this side of the 100 feet instead of that side of the 100 feet. Well, you need to make sure that you either let the chairperson know, and you need to either ask that person to get back on the 100-foot on the other side of the 100-foot, or let your chairperson do that. Again, it's very important because that we maintain that for our voters. Closing the polls. Alrighty, this is the fun part of everything, closing the polls. Remember, a few things to remember here. I know it's been a great day. We've had a lot of fun on our election day, and election day is a lot of fun. It's talking with other election inspectors, it's meeting voters, and it should be fun. But let's talk about closing the polls and some reminders. First, the polls close at 8 p.m. The chairperson announces that aloud. The polls are now closed. But everyone that is in line at 8 p.m. still gets to vote. That means that the chairperson will make that determination as far as how you choose those folks in line. Meaning, some chair people will say, go hand an application to vote to everyone that was in line. So that everyone that's in line will get an application to vote. Those are the individuals that get to vote. A lot of inspectors say, okay, you, Mr. Election Inspector, I need you to go to the end of the line, and that is the last person that gets to vote. Anyone else that comes in, you have to tell them that the polls are closed, that they can't vote. So, then one of the things is that we want to make sure that we do after everyone gets to vote is that you want to take a moment or two to balance, to make sure all of your numbers match. You want to balance the number of voters in your poll book, the number of applications to vote, and balance with the number of voters on the scan unit. So if you have 300 people in your poll book, you want to make sure you have 300 applications and that you have 300 people that have tabulated their ballot on the tabulator. Very important. We're going to play a video closing of the poll. We're going to play a video closing of the polls for the electronic poll book.
Closing of the polls, ballot summary and poll book completion. After you are sure all ballots have been tabulated, including any late arriving absentee ballots or ballots that require duplication, begin completion of the 3 reports generated in the poll book. Start by performing one last backup, then move on to the ballot summary. Be sure to use the ePoll book manual for each of these final steps to ensure you do not miss anything. In the first section of the ballot summary, enter the starting and ending number of the ballots you started with at the beginning of the day. If you have more than one ballot style, simply use the Tab key to create a new line until you've entered the numbers for each style. If you processed absentee ballots in the precinct, enter the number of absentee ballots, including FOBs and move ballots, that were returned by voters for you to process. Do not include any absent voter ballots that were spoiled prior to Election Day or issued but not returned by the voter. Now start the next section. This section is an accounting of what happened to the ballots throughout Election Day. Start with the number of ballots tabulated. You'll get this number from the tabulator and enter it on line D. If you processed AV ballots and any of the envelopes were empty, enter that number on line E. If the EPB was used properly throughout the day to account for spoiled, rejected, and envelope ballots, those numbers will already be completed for you. You cannot modify those numbers in the ballot summary. If there are errors, they'll need to be corrected within the appropriate voter record. Next, record the number of ballots you use for duplication, if any, on line H. Finally, enter the number of unused ballots in line J. The starting number is the number of the ballot you would use if one more voter were to have voted. What ballot number would you have given them? Then enter the ending number of your unused ballots. Repeat this step if you had more than one ballot style by hitting Tab to create a new line. In order for the ballot summary to calculate properly, you must hit the Tab key twice or put the cursor in a different box. Election inspectors forget this key step and often wonder why their ballot summary difference is off. Once you hit the Tab key twice, or move your cursor into a different box, you should see the number 0 on line L. If you do not see a 0, that means your ballot summary does not balance, and you must do some troubleshooting to find out why. If the total number of ballots tabulated is less than the total number of voters recorded in the poll book, check the auxiliary bin for any remaining ballots that should be duplicated and/or tabulated. Verify that all absentee ballots have been tabulated. Go through all of the envelopes to ensure they are empty. Compare the applications to vote against the list of voters to ensure every voter and every ballot, including spoiled, were entered into the EPB correctly. Verify all spoiled ballots were recorded. If the steps above do not solve the discrepancy, contact the local clerk. If the total number of ballots tabulated is more than the total number of voters recorded in the poll book, first compare the applications to vote against the list of voters to ensure every voter and every ballot, including spoiled, were entered into the EPB correctly. If this does not solve the discrepancy, conduct a physical count of the ballots tabulated. All physical counts should be conducted by a team of 2 inspectors who have expressed a preference for different political parties. If the physical count is the same as the total number of voters as recorded in the poll book, the ballots must be retabulated. Contact the local clerk for instructions. If the physical count is more than the total number of voters as recorded in the poll book, do not retabulate the ballots. Make a complete record of the situation in the remarks page of the poll book. The ballot summary must balance unless there is a valid reason for the imbalance. A valid reason must be noted in the remarks section of the poll book to complete the record. Once the ballot summary is balanced, save and print it if printing in the precinct. Then save and print, if necessary, the list of voters and remarks report and save the voter history file. Once all of these items are saved, ensure they are all in the proper folder on the encrypted flash drive. Now proceed to the back page of the poll book. Complete the election inspector's completion certificate by recording the number of ballots tabulated, recording the number of envelope ballots and ensure that they are all properly sealed into the provisional ballot storage envelope, recording the number of voters according to the list of voters, verifying that the number of ballots tabulated plus provisional envelope ballots equals the number of voters, and if they do not and a valid discrepancy exists, a notation was made in the remarks section, verify completion and balancing of the ballot summary, and that if any of the following items occurred, they were properly recorded. All formal challenges, all absent voter ballots tabulated, all ballots duplicated and tabulated, and all valid write-ins tallied. Place a check mark in each box as the task is completed and verified. Then attach a signed tabulator totals tape to each of the 3 copies of the page. The tabulator tape with the 0 tape should be attached to the copy intended for the local clerk. Proceed to the seal verification section and record the seal number of the ballot container. Remember, the ballot container should only have the following items inside: used ballots, unused ballots, VAT ballots, spoiled ballot envelope, original ballot envelope. The provisional ballot storage envelope should not be placed inside of the ballot container. It should be returned individually with the envelopes used in the final steps. Be very careful when writing the ballot storage container seal number down. A person from one political party should record the number, and someone from another political party should review the number recorded. Transposing numbers is a costly mistake and may lead to a precinct not being able to be recounted. As you are recording this information in the poll book, also record the seal number on the ballot storage container certificate. Make sure the person sealing and the person verifying sign in the appropriate locations. If you are transporting a memory device from the tabulator or EPB to the receiving board, place them into their approved container and record that seal number in the poll book and on the transfer case certificate as well. As an alternative, memory devices may remain sealed in tabulators until the expiration of the security period, and the EPB flash drive may simply be placed in its own envelope under red paper seal for delivery to the local clerk. Once everything is sealed and the steps in the election inspector completion certificate are completed, all of the inspectors, including those that sealed and verified the sealing of the container, must sign under number 3, certifying completion of all of the closing steps. If you printed your reports in the polling location, place them into the appropriate sections of the poll book. Then, carefully remove the 2 extra copies of the Statement of Votes back page of the poll book. Place the local clerk copy with the tabulator tape attached to the 0 tape into the local clerk's envelope. Place the second copy with a tabulator tape attached in the envelope addressed to the Board of Canvassers. Repeat this step with the write-in statement of votes. Once complete, place the poll book into the envelope addressed to the county clerk. All envelopes should be sealed with a red paper seal. After packing up the remaining supplies and securing the voting equipment, return the sealed ballot container and 4 envelopes to the receiving board.
Now let's go through a couple of things that we need to do in order for our closing to take place for our particular equipment. The video that you just watched shows you how to close the electronic poll book and the paperwork, and we'll get into that also. But the first thing that you do for closing our equipment is you're going to go to the printer compartment and you are going to open it and pull the paper out from, remember, printing the 0 and the open polls tape this morning, and you're going to pull that out as far as you can to where every signature line is set. So when it starts printing the totals tape, it's not printing on top of the 0 report. So next, what you will do is you will reach behind the scanner or the tabulator and press the blue poll worker button on the back of the scan unit. Once you've pushed that button, the next screen that you will see is the main menu screen, and you can see it will say close polls. You're going to select close polls. That's easy for me to say. Select close polls, and then your confirmation, it will say, are you sure you want to close the polls? And you're going to say yes, close the polls. The next screen you will see is enter close polls code. This is where you will enter the close polls code that is provided by your local clerk. It's a 6-digit code. Tap accept. When you do that, this will start printing your first totals or your first tally tape. Now remember, this tape should still be attached to your 0 tape and your open polls tape. Once this tape stops printing, you can, if your chairperson wants you to rip this tape off, and all inspectors can start signing this tape. Remember, all inspectors will have to sign this tape. This is your first tape, that is the 0 report, the open polls little tape, and the first totals tape should all be connected into one tape, and it goes into the local clerk's envelope. The next screen you will see is enabling modem screen. Please wait. You will see that it's transmitting reports or results, and then you will see transmitting results 100%, or it will attempt 3 times before that it fails. If it happens to fail, you can select retry and try to resubmit your results in the transmission mode. These results are transmitted to the county for election night results on a secure one-way network. If your transmission fails and you've retried and it fails, contact your local clerk for further instruction. The next screen you should see is transmission successful. This screen appears and there will be a small transmission tape that will print that says the time and the date that the transmission was sent successfully. You are to select or OK, and then your tabulator will start printing your second and third tally tape. The second tally tape will print, and then it'll stop for a few seconds, and then the third tally tape will start printing. So your transmission and your second tally tape should be sent to the Board of Canvassers in the second envelope, and then the third tallies tape would be sent to the county clerk. The next screen you will see is the polls are closed. This is the screen that you can print additional tally tapes if you choose to. Some precincts can and do want to print a a fourth or fifth tally tapes and maybe put that up on the wall for individuals to take a look and see who won that particular precinct if they choose to. This also runs down the list of the 0 in the first tally tape or totals tape go in the local clerk envelope. The transmission and the second tally tape goes in the Board of Canvassers envelope, and the third tally tape goes to the county clerk envelopes. Remember, all inspectors at closing should sign every single one of the tapes. Now we need to talk about write-in reports. If there are any valid write-in candidates that file a declaration of intent, again, if there are any valid write-in candidates that file a declaration of intent, we must print the write-in reports. We have to print 3 copies of those, so you will have to select Print Write-in Report, let it print, select it again, let it print, select it the third time, and let it print. You will know if there are any valid write-in candidates from your local clerks. Next, we will have to complete the statement of votes form. Record only, again, valid write-in candidates. And this is an example of a particular write-in candidate that it was William Smith, and you can see that it was William Smith was written in multiple times, and W. Smith was written in multiple times, and Bill Smith was written in multiple times. So you would write those individually down and make sure the office and the party is recorded correctly, and then you're going to write. Now, where do you get this information is from the write-in report that is printed. You do not have to pull the ballots from the tabulator to separate the ballots out to determine the write-ins. You can do that from the write-in report. Once you've completed the statement of votes, then you are going to attach the write-in reports, each copy, one to the white copy of the poll book, the pink copy of the poll book, and then to the actual poll book. Now let's talk about the write-in candidates and what they can file, when they can file, etc. First and foremost, only votes cast for candidates that are valid count. The Mickey Mouses, the Donald Ducks do not count. Your local clerk will provide you with a list of valid write-in candidates, so don't worry about that. Some clerks actually fill out the statement of votes for you. Now, with that being said, the filing deadline is the Friday before the election for write-in candidates for precinct delegates. It is 2 Fridays before for other candidates that are on the ballot. So by the Friday prior to the election, we will know if there are any valid write-in candidates. However, don't you love it when I say however? Election inspectors may take a write-in declaration of intent for a precinct delegate position on election day at your precinct. Again, precinct delegate candidates may file as a write-in candidate with a declaration of intent filed with you election inspectors on election day in your precinct for that precinct or your precinct. If that is the case, there is a form that your local clerk will provide. They fill out the information, they sign it, the chairperson will witness their signature as and sign in the notary section of that. Immediately contact your local clerk that you have a valid or you have a write-in that is filing as a precinct delegate. And then you will then, at the end of the night, as we've talked about, then you have a valid write-in. You will have to print your write-in reports. Once all of that is done, now you can power down your tabulator by pushing the red button on the back. Now let's close the voter assisted terminal or the VAT. So with that, all we do is we just close this one down. First, you do it one of two ways. The first is you push and select the ready for use, push that, or you push the poll worker button on the back of the touch writer. The next screen you will see is the enter poll worker code. Since we're closing the polls, we want to push the menu key, and then the next screen will appear as main menu. We want to close the polls. We will get the confirmation screen is yes, we want to close the polls. The next screen that you'll see is enter close polls code. You're going to enter the closed polls code that is provided by your local clerk and click accept. Then you will reach around and power the touch writer off. Next thing that we're going to do in our closing is we are going to unlock and open the ballot box and remove all of the ballots. We ask that you put these ballots in some kind of a nice little order. They don't have to be front back, but they need to just be kind of somewhat in order. We also ask that you hand count all of these ballots. We want to ensure that this amount of ballots that you have in physical count of your ballots match your tabulator number and your number of voters. And then you will record that hand count on the poll book. There should be a sticker on the front of the poll book that you're going to enter that number for. Transfer all those ballots then to a ballot container. You want to then seal that ballot container with your ballots and make sure that your ballot container is sealed properly. If you forget and if you accidentally seal your container incorrectly, as long as you have not left the polling location, you can reseal that container. Make sure that you make the corrections in the poll book. But you as inspectors have the authority to correct that error if they are not sealed correctly. The only other entity that can seal that container correctly would be the receiving board. It is very important that your ballot containers are sealed appropriately, because if they are not, it will not be recountable. The next thing for closing the poll is transferring the V drives. Some municipalities do not have you do this. Others may have you do this. Ask your local clerk if you are responsible for doing this. If you are, then you will break the seal as shown in the left photo here, or cut the seal. You will open the container and retrieve the V drive, and you will take that V drive and put that into an approved container, and then you will seal that container with the appropriate seal and the certificate, and then you will return that to the receiving board for processing. The next thing is packing up your equipment. This equipment has to last for many years, so we want to make sure that if you are responsible for packing your equipment up, take the few moments to make sure that it is packed correctly. And just here are just a few steps to do that. After closing down the equipment, now you need to complete the back of the poll book. It is important to make sure that you record these and make sure that all your check marks are checked, make sure that the seals are recorded appropriately, and that make sure that all inspectors have signed the back of the poll book. Record the number of ballots tabulated, 300 in this case. Provisional ballot envelopes, 0. The number of voters, 300. Your numbers should match 300 and 300. All of your check marks, the seal verifications. These are where your ballot storage container seal numbers are recorded. In this example I have, there were 2 containers. Most of you will only have 1 container, so you won't have 2 seal numbers there, but that's why they're there if you have multiple containers. This particular precinct in this example sealed their transfer or their V drives so they could go back to the local clerk's office. If you do not seal or transfer your V drive, you won't have a seal number in there. And make sure that 2 inspectors sign that of different parties. Then number 3, make sure that all of your inspectors, even the 2 that signed above, sign on the bottom of the poll book here. This is a list of what goes in which envelope from the poll book. So you have the white statement of votes, the white write-in statement of votes that go to the local clerks. Then you have the pink statement of vote and the pink write-in that goes to the pink envelope or the board of canvassers. And then you have the actual poll book and the write-in statement of vote, which is left in the poll book that goes to the county clerk. That's manila. It's kind of interesting. White, pink, and manila. That's pretty cool, right? This is an example of what the receiving board checklist looks like, and this is what your receiving board is looking for when you bring your information and your envelopes back on election night. So you can take a look at some of these things that they're looking for. Thank you for your commitment and ensuring a successful election in Livingston County. On behalf of Elizabeth Hunley, the Livingston County Clerk, and myself, Joe Bridgman, the Elections Coordinator for Livingston County, we appreciate each and every one of you doing a fantastic job. In the event that you have any questions or comments or concerns, please give your local clerk a call or give us a call. And again, we thank you immensely for your service to your community.